You know that feeling when someone crosses a line so outrageously that your brain refuses to believe it's even happening? That was me last Tuesday, standing in my driveway, staring at the gleaming cherry red Lamborghini that had somehow claimed permanent residence in front of my gate. Not just any Lamborghini. The Lamborghini. The kind that snaps necks on every street corner. And it didn't belong to some mysterious rich neighbor. No, it belonged to Karen, our lovely local HOA president. Now, Karen wasn't just any HOA figurehead. She was the type who micromanaged everyone's lawn height, criticized the shade of your curtains, and enforced rules nobody remembered voting on. But this parking a six-figure supercar on my property line, without so much as a sorry, this went far beyond her usual brand of suburban tyranny. It had all begun innocently enough. Or at least that's what I told myself. A week earlier, noticed a small luxury SUV parked in front of my gate. Didn't think much of it. Probably a visitor. But day after day, return. Same place. Same angle. Same annoyance. Eventually, the pattern became impossible to ignore. And then came that morning. The Lamborghini arrived, chrome polished to a mirror shine. Sunlight dancing across its hood. Engine rumbling like a caged predator. It honestly looked like it was daring me to react. I tried reasoning with Karen, knocked on her door, stayed polite, yet firm. "Hey Karen, can we talk about the car?" Her response? A smirk, a lazy wave of her hand, and a sentence that would replay in my head for days. "It's my son's car. He'll park it wherever he wants. Deal with it. Deal with it." The nerve. The absolute, staggering audacity. I felt the air grow heavy around me. A sharp mix of disbelief and simmering anger. It wasn't about the car anymore. It was about someone who believed they were untouchable. Someone convinced that the rules bent around them. So I started documenting everything. Dates, times, photos, the whole parade of entitlement. I tried talking to neighbors. I posted in community forums. Filed multiple HOA complaints. Nothing. Karen's influence was a steel wall, cold, solid, impossible to get through. Meanwhile, her son's Lamborghini sat there, smugly, gleaming in front of my gate like a trophy to arrogance. My frustration wasn't just rising, it was evolving, boiling, escalating into something I couldn't contain. That's when the thought struck me. Maybe words weren't enough anymore. Maybe polite requests and HOA forms meant nothing to people like Karen. Maybe action was the only language she understood. By Friday, everything had reached a breaking point. That cherry red monster of a car still sat there, taunting me, daring me every morning as I stepped outside. Coffee in hand, jaw tight, heart pounding. It carried the weight of every rule Karen had bent, every intimidation she'd tossed my way, every dismissive gesture she'd flicked in my direction. I knew something had to change. I knew I needed to do something unforgettable, something the entire neighborhood would talk about for years. But I couldn't just storm over, screaming. That was her battlefield, not mine. Karen fed on drama like oxygen. I needed precision, strategy, control. This was no longer a petty dispute. This was about reclaiming my space, my driveway, and my sanity. So Friday evening, I planted myself at my kitchen table, property blueprints spread out, pen in hand, coffee long gone cold. I weighed every possible path. Confrontation had failed. Legal options were slow and maddeningly clogged with bureaucracy. I needed something indisputable, something final. I thought about her arrogance. The audacity of that Lamborghini sitting there like it owned my life. I could practically hear it revving smugly, mocking me, and then it hit me with the force of lightning. What if I flipped the script? What if I created a moment so shocking, so undeniable, that Karen and her precious Lamborghini would finally understand that entitlement had limits? My mind raced. Tow it? Too slow. Report it again? Useless. Leave notes? Call the cops? Try one more polite conversation? Pointless. No. The solution had to be decisive, and then a bulldozer entered the picture. My neighbor had rented one recently for landscaping. A spark ignited. A plan was formed. If I could gain access carefully, strategically, the Lamborghini would no longer be a symbol of Karen's power. It would become a lesson she'd remember for the rest of her life. I spent hours plotting every detail, where to position the bulldozer, how to avoid damaging anything except the intended target, how to ensure no one could interfere before the plan was completed. Perfectly, every inch mattered, every second counted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked the driveway in darkness, imagining the Lamborghini's sleek lines under the streetlight, its shiny hood looking smug as ever. I pictured the moment it would finally face the consequences of Karen's arrogance. Pulse thundered, adrenaline fused with the sense of inevitability. I realized this wasn't just about a car. It was about finally standing up to someone who acted as though respect and basic decency were optional. And in that quiet hour, the plan hardened inside me like steel. Tomorrow, that Lamborghini would face consequences it had never imagined. By morning, every step was mapped out. I was ready. The bulldozer would roll. The Lamborghini would meet its fate. And Karen's reign of suburban terror would finally collide with an immovable force. It wasn't reckless. It was calculated, precise, and above all, satisfying. The sun rose like a spotlight over our quiet suburban street, illuminating the stage for what was about to unfold. I could feel the tension thick in the air, almost electric, as if the morning itself understood the magnitude of the moment. When I approached the bulldozer parked behind my neighbor's house, its massive metal frame gleamed under the early light. Raw power coiled like a predator waiting to lunge. My hands gripped the controls, a little shaky at first, but my resolve quickly solidified. Today wasn't about fear. Today was about reclaiming what belonged to me. As I maneuvered the bulldozer toward my driveway, I caught sight of a few early risers peeking through their blinds, curiosity pulling at their expressions. I ignored them. Focus was everything. Now, Karen's Lamborghini sat waiting like a shiny red insult, everything I valued about my home. Its polished exterior reflected the sunlight with a smug shimmer, almost as if it were silently daring me to act. And I would. I had rehearsed every inch of this operation, every movement mapped out. The precision of it thrilled me. Somewhere, beneath all the anger, it felt strangely poetic. I eased the bulldozer to a stop just a few feet from the Lamborghini, taking in its immaculate lines one last time. The street had gone eerily, still too still. My heart thudded in my chest as I engaged the hydraulic arm, the machine lifting with the deep, menacing hum. It felt like the entire week of frustration, arrogance, and dismissiveness had funneled itself into this single moment. I nudged the bulldozer forward, inch by controlled inch, feeling the balance of power and precision in my hands. This wasn't about mindless destruction. This was about making a statement that would echo through the entire neighborhood. The Lamborghini's engine was off, yet in my mind, it roared defiantly, challenging me to hesitate. But hesitation wasn't in the cards anymore. The blade connected. The crunch of metal against metal cut through the air, a sharp, resonant sound that vibrated through the street. A sound so satisfying it sent chills down my spine. The Lamborghini shifted slightly under the pressure, a clear sign that everything was going exactly as planned. I maneuvered with meticulous care, making sure not to damage anything except the intended target. Every move felt like part of a carefully choreographed dance, justice captured in slow motion. When I finally disengaged the bulldozer, the Lamborghini sat firmly repositioned, completely immobilized, and impossible for anyone to ignore. It was no longer a symbol of Karen's arrogance. It was a monument to consequences. The street, after its stunned silence, erupted with quiet murmurs as neighbors peeked out. Some looked shocked, others confused, and a few couldn't hide the amusement tugging at their lips. As I climbed down from the bulldozer, adrenaline still pulsing through me, a realization struck. This moment wasn't about petty revenge. It was about boundaries, respect, and the unwritten rules that hold a community together. And in that moment, one truth was undeniable. I had won. By now, small clusters of neighbors had gathered, whispering and pointing at the immobilized Lamborghini. Karen emerged from her front door, her perfectly coiffed hair catching the sunlight like a warning beacon, her face sliding between disbelief and eruption-level fury. She froze when she saw the car tilted, stuck, and transformed into a dramatic display of accountability. a living reminder of what happens when someone pushes too far. I stood in my driveway, arms crossed, the taste of vindication rich and unmistakable. This wasn't about showing off power, it was about balance, about respect. The entire neighborhood had seen her flaunt the rules, and now they were witnessing the aftermath of entitlement meeting reality. A few neighbors chuckled quietly, others whispered animatedly while recording the scene on their phones. Social media was about to have a field day, but for now, this was real-time justice. Karen stormed toward me, heel stabbing the pavement with furious precision. "What did you do to my son's car?" she shrieked, arms flailing wildly as though she could undo the damage through sheer rage. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pointed toward the bulldozer, the clean path I had driven, the undisturbed driveway, the careful lack of collateral damage. Every inch executed with intention. Her expression twisted from anger to stunned realization. She understood then that this wasn't reckless destruction. This was a calculated message. The rule she'd flaunted, the authority she'd wielded like a weapon, both had finally collided with an immovable force. And that force was me. The neighbors murmured, a quiet wave of approval drifting through the crowd. Karen retreated, muttering under her breath, while her son emerged, looking equally bewildered. His prized Lamborghini, once a symbol of status and superiority, now sat humbled and helpless, a dramatic lesson delivered most unforgettably. As the adrenaline drained from my system, deeper truth settled in. Boundaries matter, respect matters, and sometimes, when polite attempts fail again and again, you have to assert yourself in a way no one can ignore. The street, usually quiet and uneventful, hummed with new energy, a shared understanding that even audacity has limits. Later, I stood at my gate, sipping my coffee, watching the Lamborghini remain exactly where it deserved to be, outside, visible, and undeniably under my control. Karen would have to rethink every rule she believed she could twist. And I had reclaimed my peace, my space, and probably earned a legendary neighborhood story in the process. The lesson was simple. Never underestimate the quiet person who's been pushed too far. And sometimes, the most satisfying victories come with a whole lot of horsepower. So what would you do if Karen parked her Lamborghini in your way? Comment below and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable HOA battles.